Before the fall of 2022, I would have offered a different reflection today. I could have focused on the relationship between Mary, Martha, and Jesus, or the way the story was crafted by John. But today I offer a reflection grounded in the illness of Lazarus and the role of caregiving as understood through Mary and Martha. All of my life I have been an active person. I was a college athlete and I'm a former New Yorker who could walk for miles. However, my favorite thing in the world is chasing around my niece and nephew. But then abruptly, I was told I had a rare neurological autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. Some of the symptoms included muscle weakness, slurred speech, and an inability to swallow. While relieved to learn that some of the unexplainable symptoms were now explainable, my husband and I left the office shell-shocked. We felt disbelief, grief, and sadness. Maybe you have had a similar experience, or you have accompanied a loved one in this situation. It is hard and it is heavy. 1 year later, my suffering intensified and I received a new diagnosis in addition to myasthenia gravis, called myalgic encephalomyelitis, formerly known as chronic fatigue syndrome. Again, we went through the same cycle of emotions. But as the sick one, I saw how the second diagnosis affected my caregivers, particularly my husband and my mother, who are my hands and my feet. They push me in my wheelchair, cook my meals, they manage my infusions and medications, but they also remind me of the hope of tomorrow. By doing that, day in and day out, they experience caregiver fatigue. They themselves feel anxiety. Their hopefulness ebbs and flows, and they have to grieve the life they once knew with me. I share this because as I reflect on Mary and Martha in this passage, I cannot help but imagine how the weight of Lazarus' illness affected them. All we know from Scripture is Lazarus was ill. We don't know how long he suffered, what healers told him, what kind of medicines he tried. We also know Jesus loved this family deeply, and Mary, Martha, and Lazarus believed in who Jesus was. They did not doubt that Jesus could save Lazarus, but at the same time, they could feel Lazarus' death approaching. This must have been a very fearful and uncertain time, a familiar feeling to caregivers today. While imagining this scene, God brings me back to Lazarus lying in his bed at home. I am reminded of the time I have spent ill in bed and what that experience is like. Perhaps like me, Lazarus was happy to have visitors, but was sometimes too tired to speak with them. Maybe Lazarus could sense his sister's frustration that Jesus was not there, but didn't know what to say. It is possible Lazarus felt the presence of others praying over him, like I have on many occasions. And it has brought both him and I consolation. And maybe even Lazarus longed for Jesus himself and struggled to believe that his friend wouldn't come. One of the corporal works of mercy is to visit the sick. A friend visited me once saying, "Knowing someone is ill is different than seeing and experiencing someone sick." That was profoundly moving to me, and I believe speaks to the way Mary, Martha, and Lazarus must have felt when Jesus did not come in time. I can only imagine them saying, "Just get here, Jesus. Just be with us." But in Jesus' human experience, he could not get there in time to be with his friend, whom he loved. And for that, he wept. Yet that's not the end of the story. In the face of mourning, Jesus calls out to God on behalf of the faith of the people gathered. Lazarus arises and walks himself out of the tomb. Lazarus' body is restored and renewed. His caregivers astonished and relieved. And a community comes to believe that Jesus offers new life here on earth and in the life to come. Our invitation today is to acknowledge the power of our own healing presence. We are no Jesus, but we are part of God's creation. Oftentimes we think we need to do things for someone who is ill. But in my experience, just by being with someone who is ill, you bring both God's joy and peace. May this Lenten season continue to be a time of reflection and growth for you and your loved ones.